So hey there friends, welcome to episode 215 of SelfKind with me, Erica Webb. Alright, today's episode, a little bit different. I'm going to take you onto the roller skating rink with me, where I had a bit of a tumble earlier today, and I want to share some lessons that I think are really valuable between the safety equipment that we use on the rink and the stuff that we put into our everyday lives. So as I'm recording this podcast episode, I am ahead of the game. I very rarely can say that because I'm the kind of person who does things just when they need to be done. I am always a little ahead of myself, but never very much. And this episode, I'm actually recording like 3 weeks before it goes live, which is truly unheard of. The reason why is because my family and I are taking a 3-week camping trip up to Central Australia. We're going to go see Uluru and do a whole bunch of touristy stuff, and it's going to be really fun. So I'm ahead of myself, which I tell you because if you do follow me over on Instagram and you watch my stories, the story I'm about to tell you, you might have seen me share in my stories a couple of weeks ago. And so no, your timing's not off. I am just ahead of the game, which is unusual for sure. So what I wanted to talk about today, I'm sitting here recording this and I am feeling a little tender, a little sore, because this morning I went roller skating as I do most Friday mornings. From recent times, I've started doing this just this year, and I had a big fall. It was a bit silly, actually. Well, it wasn't silly. It just happened. It was unexpected, as falls often are. I was coming to a stop and my weight all went into my heels, which is not a good thing when you're on skates. And I landed on my back pretty hard, right on the back of my pelvis, and my head hit the floor. Now, luckily, I was wearing a helmet. I was wearing all the safety pads because I am not silly, but I am still really tender. So I've spent quite a bit of time on my return home doing things like gentle moving, breathing, extending my exhalations. I might talk a little bit more about the tools that I've used later on, but really kind of loving up on myself because I am feeling kind of tender and quite protective. But what I wanted to talk about in this episode is the parallels between the sort of security or safety equipment that I wear to go roller skating, and how they are very similar to the tools, the practices, and the people that we lean upon to navigate life. And the really key part of this story, I'm jumping ahead, but the key part of this story is that our safety equipment doesn't protect us completely. It doesn't stop us from getting hurt. It doesn't stop us from being in pain. It doesn't stop us from experiencing life. But it can absolutely cushion the blow. So, as I mentioned, I had all the safety equipment on this morning. When I first started skating, I only wore knee pads, elbow pads, and wrist guards. I didn't have a helmet. And I did several weeks where I didn't have a helmet, and I realized that I was nervous. I was quite tentative on the rink. And I saw that about half the people in the lesson were wearing helmets and the other half weren't. And of course, my inner teenager was like, are you a dork if you decide to wear a helmet? Is it okay to choose to wear a helmet? And I very quickly was like, are you kidding me? My head is like my asset, right? I need my head intact. I need my brain intact. And so I promptly went out and bought myself a helmet. Just to pause on that point, I think it can be very valuable to notice some of those really surprising thoughts that can pop up. Sometimes when I say these things out loud, other people will be like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize other people thought like that. And every now and then someone will be like, why would you ever think that was a problem? But it can be very interesting to recognize those thoughts, because that is automatic, right? That thought of like, oh, well, people think I'm silly for wearing a helmet. That wasn't like a conscious conjuring up of that thought. It just existed somewhere under the surface. And so getting curious about it and being like, oh, I don't even care if people think I'm silly for wearing a helmet. My head is far more important than their opinion. So that's, side note, but that is interesting. So I promptly got myself a helmet, and I noticed that with getting the helmet, my skating style and skill increased straight away. because I didn't have that same fear. I didn't have that same sort of gingerness. To be fair, I'm still fairly tentative. That is just who I am. I think I'm a little bit tentative with those sorts of things. But my ability to push a little bit absolutely increased, and it increased very quickly because suddenly I had this safety net, right? I had this security factor that if I was to fall, I know I'm not going to crack my head because I've got the helmet. Now today, when I fell, I did crack my head. My back landed and then my head whacked down on the ground pretty hard. And it knocked the wind out of me. My pelvis is very sore. Hurt my neck a little bit in the sort of like, whipping motion of cracking my head down. But my head was fine because I had this helmet in place. And as I kind of got up from that fall, I had people checking that, making sure I was okay. And I'm like, I think I am. But as I was getting up, it occurred to me that there is this really deep parallel between choosing to wear the safety equipment and the tools that we choose to practice in our everyday lives as a way of dampening life. Not dampening life, that's not quite the right word. We don't want to dampen life, but dampening the perhaps negative, lifey stuff that can sometimes be really challenging. They're the reasons that we so often do the things we do, right? Like chasing joy, like practicing yoga, like practicing our breathing. It's all to help us become more resilient. It's all to help us navigate the challenges of life. However, if we are to believe that by doing all the things, we're somehow going to completely avoid pain, discomfort, unexpected tragedy, we are incorrect. And I think that we can get ourselves very much stuck in that way of thinking sometimes, where it's like, but I'm doing all the things. Why am I suffering here? Like, why am I still experiencing moments of pain? And I think the sooner that we accept that life will have those ebbs and flows, those ups and downs, the sooner we can look at our tools for exactly what they are. Tools to support our resilience, tools to support our well-being, tools to support us in loving and respecting ourselves more. Putting on my knee pads, putting on my helmet, it is an act of self-respect. Yes, it's an act of self-protection as well, but I cannot go onto that rink and believe deep down that because I have all the equipment on, nothing can go wrong. Like, that is just simply not true. Today's fall was definitely the hardest fall I've had, but it wasn't my first. And I guarantee it will not be my last. Because if we're out there doing the things, we are going to experience those moments that feel hard and challenging and, threaten to kind of exceed our resources. There's that saying, I can't remember it now, so it's not going to be very good, but, the bravery of being in the arena. And that's the thing. When we go out there and we live our lives, when we go out there and we find these things that bring us joy, there is no guarantee that those tools completely buffer us from distress. It's not that when we experience those real lifey moments of pain, discomfort, sadness, that our tools are failing us, right? Like, it's just not that. It can point to places, though, where perhaps we can call upon additional resources if we need to. So a good example of that is where I had my knee pads, my wrist guards, and my elbow pads, but I wasn't wearing a helmet. It only took me one fall where my head nearly cracked on the ground to realize that, what would be really supportive to me and my growth in this area is to stick a helmet on my head, because it's going to make me feel more safe. And that's like, as we navigate life, being like, like, I'm doing okay, but I think I need to call upon some other level of support, whether it's reaching out to be supported by a professional, whether it's, I think I need the support of joy And so going and doing something that brings us joy. I think I need the support of movement because my body is sore and tight. I think I need the support of a regular massage because I need the comfort that comes from that physical touch. Whatever it might be, sometimes our pain, our discomfort, our moments of fear or risk can point us in the direction of where could we do with more support. And sometimes they just simply point us in the direction of more of what we already have, right? So I fell today. Probably not going to get any more safety equipment. I'm not sure what else I could get. Maybe padded pants. Actually, one of the women has padded pants, which could have been very helpful today. Probably would have saved a little bit of bruising on my sacrum. So maybe. But at the same time, I had everything that I needed then, right? Like now I just have to work on the skill of stopping because that was what I was doing when I fell. I was trying to stop. Ironic, right? So sometimes it just points us in the direction of like, keep doing what you're doing. Your safety nets are working, right? Because you are okay. Pain, discomfort, challenge are not signs that we are failing. They are not signs that we are getting anything wrong. They are signs that we are living a human life. I said that I might loop back around to the things that I did to support myself after the fact. And I think it would be worth talking about that because we have this moment, I guess, where like, you know, something went wrong. I look at it and I go like, what could be different? Honestly, the only thing I really think that could be different is that I keep working on that skill of stopping. So I don't need anything else right now. I mean, I needed what I did after because that helped me to regain a sense of sort of contact with my body and safety in my body. But in terms of like, where do I go from here? I just go back out on the rink next week, right? Assuming that my body is ready for that. I just keep practicing the skills that I'm already practicing and keep those support systems, i.e. my safety equipment, in place. I also have my skating teacher who's going to probably teach me some different skills. And so nothing really needs to change in that regard. But we can also think about like when we have these moments in life that, you know, literally or metaphorically kind of throw us to the ground, what can we do to support ourselves in the recovery of those things? So our tools exist to help us minimize the blows a little bit, I think, and to help us recover when those inevitable blows occur. So in this instance, the three things that I did when I kind of got home was I laid down on the floor and I did some gentle movement. I did some really conscious breathing. The gentle movement was couple-fold. I wanted to make sure that I could move all the bits, right? I wanted to make sure that my back was like moving well. Nothing felt like it was grabbing and catching. But I also wanted to show my body that, yeah, we've had a moment of like, something's gone wrong here. We have injured ourselves to some extent. Things hurt, but we're okay. And so a lot of movement-based tools exist in the way that I work with them anyway, to help prove to our body, to prove to our brain that we're okay, that we can use our body, that we can move our body, that the holding patterns that our body is in that moment when we're feeling tense and tight and sore don't need to hold on so hard because we're actually okay. And so there's this communication that's happening between the body and the brain as I'm doing this gentle movement to say, you know what, we're okay, we're good. We got this. And it's not pushy and it's not forceful. Like if I couldn't have done those movements, I wouldn't have pushed them, right? Like, and nothing about it was pushy. If you saw videos over on my stories about what I was doing, I was literally lying on the most deflated, like Gertie ball, Pilates ball, just to create a little bit of a cushion between my hips, my pelvis and the floor. And I was rocking my pelvis around, just, you know, finding that full range of motion in a really gentle way. And then I did some breathing. I lay on my belly and I breathed for about 2 to 3 minutes. And I breathed at a ratio of 1 to 2. So I did a breath in for about a count of 3. And then I did a breath out for double that length of time. And the reason that I did that was because our breathing is a direct line to our nervous system. Our nervous system is what is going to be scanning the world for threat. When I fell, that is a moment of threat, right? the impact, the thinking processes that go on as a result of that, the pain, the discomfort, the inflammation, all of that is a moment of like, oh, we better protect this human, right? And so by breathing, by using a breath that we know taps into our parasympathetic nervous system to calm us down, to help us feel safe, makes sense. Because I want to prove again to my brain, to my body, we are okay. The threat has passed. But when we have a moment like that, where we have the wind knocked out of us, where we're frightened, where we have a moment of self-doubt or self-criticism or fear, when that moment is gone, the residue of that can sort of hang around for a while if we're not conscious of how to help ourselves move past it. And so that breathing was really to just have like a moment of going, it's okay. Like we're past that moment of fear. And then I hopped in a bath and stuck a bunch of magnesium salt in there. And that was partly because I actually just wanted to give myself the comfort of the warm water. It felt really nice. And I knew that I just wanted to pause for a little bit longer. I had a really long list of things I needed and wanted to do this afternoon. I'm not going to get through them all because I used up a lot of time doing those things. But in the moment, that was more important. My to-do list isn't going anywhere. I promise. There's no one that's going to probably come and take those things off my list. But looking after myself in that moment was my priority. And that can be a really interesting thing to play with too, because like, where is your priority? There's things that need to be done before we head off on this trip. I have, all the work that I would normally do for those 3 weeks. I want to do as much of it as possible before I go so that I can, enjoy more of the time in the middle of Australia. But at the same time, I know that my priority is always going to be on my well-being first before my business's well-being, always. Because without my well-being, the business is not going to be well anyway, right? So just an example of like what I did after the fact, because the truth is that, like I said, the tools, they do exist to help buffer us from pain, discomfort, challenge. Absolutely they do, because we become more capable of navigating things. We become more resilient. We become more honest. We become more flexible in our responses to things. And we also need those tools to help us navigate when things inevitably knock us to our knees. Or maybe they don't knock us to our knees, but they, it's a blip, right? Like there's a moment of like, bleh. And we have to have the resources at our disposal to be able to navigate what next. And so the things that I have in my toolkit and the things that I share when I work with people to put in their toolkits are things like movement, breathing, the way we talk to and respond to ourselves, the way that we make space for our needs. And those tools are things that we will practice for a lifetime. Absolutely. Just like when I get onto the skating rink next time, I'm going to be practicing stopping. I'm going to be practicing my turns. I'm going to be practicing all these things that even if I can do them right now, I could definitely, get better at. The goal for me isn't to perfect any of them though. I'm just there to have some fun. Just like in real life, I'm not actually here to perfect the art of being human because it is quite the ride, but I am here to navigate how to be in that space with more self-acceptance every step of the way, learning to be my own best friend more of the time. And that is what I'm absolutely here to support you to do as well. So I hope that offers some insight into how we can use our tools to both support ourselves before and after, insult or injury to the system. I would love to know if you have any questions, if you have any thoughts that have come from that. So as always, that you can come over and find me on Instagram. I'm at Erica Webb _SelfKind. You can also visit me over on my website, ericawebb.com.au. And if as you're listening, you're like, oh, I need some more tools and I would like to work with you to develop some of that, that toolbox for myself, I am still taking one-on-one clients, and I am still working with the members of the SelfKind Hub with these tools. So if you want to look at different ways of working with me, connect with me via the website or come over and chat with me over in the DMs on Instagram and we can talk about what might be the best fit. Until next week, keep being kind to yourself. I will look forward to talking to you then. Have a great one.